What if I told you that inside every woman lives a power so ancient, so intoxicating, so magnetic, that even Carl Jung himself called it too dangerous to name out loud? What if the feminine force men fear the most is not her anger, not her independence, not her silence, but her ability to seduce reality itself? Not seduction of the body, but seduction of the psyche, a spiritual pull, a gravitational field of emotion, intuition, and shadow, a whisper that enters the soul before it touches the skin. Tonight, we enter the realm of the Seductress Archetype, Jung's most forbidden feminine power, the archetype he said could mesmerize, manipulate, liberate, and destroy all in one breath. But here's the real question. Is she a blessing or a curse? Because the seductress is not a woman. She is a force, a psychological storm, a living symbol of the feminine shadow, the part of a woman that knows exactly where a man's unhealed wounds sleep and how to wake them up. She is the woman who doesn't chase, she pulls, not with her voice, but with her presence, not with her beauty, but with her archetypal energy. And yet, most women don't even know she lives inside them. Most men don't even know she lives inside their fantasies. And all of us, men and women, feel her power long before we understand it. So the question becomes, why did Jung warn us about her? Why is this archetype considered forbidden? Why does her presence feel both holy and dangerous, both divine and destructive, both deeply familiar and terrifyingly unknown? The answer is simple, because she represents the feminine force that refuses to be controlled, the feminine that cannot be owned, the feminine that does not submit to logic but bends reality through intuition, spiritual magnetism, and the ancient language of the unconscious. This is the seductress archetype, the mirror of a man's desire and the shadow of a woman's power, merged into one soul-shaking force. Welcome to the realm where psychology becomes myth, myth becomes magic, and magic becomes truth. Carl Jung once said that the most dangerous forces in the human psyche are not the monsters we see, but the symbols we feel. And the seductress is not flush. She is not a personality. She is not a type of woman. She is an archetype, a living psychological pattern that has existed longer than language, longer than civilization, longer than humanity's ability to name the shadows inside itself. Jung believed that every human being carries ancient symbols in the unconscious, blueprints of instinct, emotion, and myth that shape how we desire, how we fear, how we attach, how we fall apart. And the seductress archetype is the feminine symbol that holds the power of magnetism. She is the part of the psyche that can awaken obsession, longing, surrender, projection, the intense psychological currents that make a person feel like their soul is being pulled by invisible threads. This is why Jung warned us. The seductress doesn't just seduce men, she seduces the unconscious. She opens the doors to emotions people are not ready to meet. She stirs the shadows that sleep beneath desire. She lifts the veil on the hidden truths people spend their whole lives trying to avoid. She is the embodiment of what Jung called the anima possession in men, the state where a man falls in love not with a real woman, but with his own inner feminine, projected onto her. He becomes hypnotized, not by who she is, but by what she awakens inside him. And for women, the seductress represents the forbidden power to influence the world not through control, not through force, but through energetic resonance, the spiritual gravity of the feminine. Jung called this the dark magic of the unconscious feminine, the power that can heal or destroy, raise or ruin, open the soul or shatter it. So when we speak of the seductress, we are not describing a woman. We are describing the shadowed, sacred feminine force within the collective psyche, the part that knows how to read desires that were never spoken and awaken emotions that were never allowed to exist. She is the key and the lock, the dream and the nightmare, the question and the answer. This is Jung's forbidden feminine, the psychological storm that few understand and even fewer survive unchanged. Jung taught that the unconscious does not speak in logic. It speaks in magnetism, in sensations that make no rational sense but feel ancient, familiar, undeniable. The seductress archetype is the feminine embodiment of this magnetic language. She does not pursue, she pulls. Her energy moves like gravity, drawing people toward her the way the moon pulls the tides. This pull is not sexual first, it is psychic. It bypasses the mind and reaches straight into the emotional body, awakening instincts that has been asleep for centuries. Jung said that when the seductress appears, she activates what he called the archaic memory, the ancestral emotional codes stored deep in the collective unconscious. This is why people feel drawn to her without understanding why her silence feels louder than another woman's words, why her presence feels like a dream that refuses to fade with morning light. Her magnetism is not about beauty. Beauty can be ignored, but archetypal energy cannot. The seductress embodies three forbidden forces within the unconscious. Emotional clairvoyance. She senses what others try to hide. She reads the energy behind the smile, the fear behind the confidence, the longing behind the anger. Resonance. Her presence amplifies the emotional truth of others. People feel more themselves around her, or more exposed. Projection. Others project their fantasies, wounds, desires, and shadows onto her, believing she is the source, when in truth, she is only the mirror. This is why Jung considered her dangerous, not because she intends destruction, but because the unconscious reacts to her with overwhelming force. To the wounded man, she becomes salvation. To the insecure man, she becomes a threat. To the spiritually blind man, she becomes a hallucination of desire. To the awakened man, she becomes revelation. And for the woman who carries this archetype, her magnetism becomes a double edge, a gift that brings followers, lovers, admirers, seekers, and also jealousy, obsession, projection, misunderstanding. She becomes the center of emotional weather. People orbit her without knowing why. Some come seeking light, some come seeking shadow, some come wanting to take, some come hoping to be transformed. And every one of them feels that indescribable pull, the ancient magnetic signature of the seductress archetype. Every time the seductress archetype enters the room, something invisible happens. The shadow inside every person silently opens its eyes. Jung said the shadow is the part of the psyche we pretend doesn't exist. Our unspoken desires, our hidden insecurities, our forbidden fantasies, our suppressed anger, our spiritual hunger. Most people spend their entire lives trying to bury these parts of themselves, but the seductress, she awakens them. Not because she intends to, not because she manipulates, but because her archetypal energy illuminates what others try to hide. She is like a candle in a dark room. The moment she appears, every shadow is suddenly visible. A man who has never confronted his loneliness feels it burning in her presence. A man who hides his hunger for connection feels exposed under her gaze. A man who avoids emotional truth finds it rising like smoke around her, no matter how hard he tries to control it. This is why many men fear her, not because she is dangerous, but because she makes them face themselves. The seductress activates what Jung called the erotic unconscious, not sexual in the modern sense, but the ancient erotic force of life, depth, passion, the instinctual truth that exists beneath the surface. She awakens the part of a man that wants to be seen fully, but she also awakens the part that is terrified of being seen. For women, the shadow she awakens is equally powerful. She stirs the sleeping feminine fire: confidence, intuition, sensuality, spiritual knowing, emotional authority. Some women feel inspired by her, some feel threatened, some feel jealous, some feel awakened, some feel confused because she activates in them the version of the feminine they were taught to suppress. This is why the seductress archetype is often misunderstood as manipulative, dangerous, or destructive. But Jung would argue that she is simply truth incarnate. She reveals what is already there. She brings the unconscious into the light. She forces the psyche to face its own reflection. And most people are not ready to meet the versions of themselves they have been hiding from. This is her forbidden power. She does not seduce the body, she seduces the shadow. If there is one force Jung feared more than desire itself, it was projection, the unconscious tendency to assign our hidden inner world onto another person and mistake them for the container of our soul. The seductress archetype is the most powerful projection surface in the human psyche, not because she wants it, but because her energy is a mirror disguised as a woman. People look at her and see not who she is, but who they are beneath the layers of denial, wounds, fantasies, and longing. A lonely man sees salvation. A wounded man sees healing. A controlling man sees rebellion. A spiritually lost man sees destiny. A repressed man sees temptation. A narcissistic man sees competition. An awakened man sees revelation. But none of these visions belong to her. They belong to the unconscious of the observer. Jung said this phenomenon is so powerful that a person can fall in love with their own projection and mistakenly believe they are in love with the seductress herself. This is why she triggers obsession. She becomes the canvas on which a man paints the woman he needs rather than the woman who exists. He is not drawn to her reality. He is drawn to the emotional myth his unconscious shapes around her. This is the forbidden truth. The seductress awakens the archetypal feminine inside a man, not through touch, but through symbolism. She embodies the energy of the anima, the inner woman in a man's psyche, the part of him that dreams, that feels, that yearns, that fears, that longs for spiritual fusion. And because this force is so strong, men often confuse inner awakening with outer attraction. He thinks she is the answer, but the answer lives inside him. For the woman who carries the seductress archetype, this projection becomes overwhelming. People accuse her of things she never said. They imagine promises she never made. They expect her to fulfill wounds she never created. They blame her for emotions they were already drowning in. Jung warned us, where projection is strongest, consciousness is weakest. This is why the seductress must walk carefully, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Her power is real, but the unconscious fantasies projected onto her are even stronger. She must learn to distinguish between the man who sees her and the man who only sees himself reflected in her shadow.